Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be all about travel. So if you are planning to take a vacation this summer, you're going to want to watch this video if you have disabilities, chronic illnesses, are traveling with mobility aids, or have medical devices, because I'm going to give you all of my advice for traveling with a chronic illness, with mobility aids, and with medical devices and equipment. Okay, we're going to start off by talking about traveling with a feeding tube. So this is my feeding tube backpack. It's nice and small and compact. And so I'm going to share a couple of the things that I bought specifically for traveling with a feeding tube. So number one, we're going to start with, you need to get some medical supply tags. I bought these off of Etsy. I can put the link down below if you would like them. So the front just says that it's a medical supply bag. So I, for where we were going, needed to take 2 medical supply bags. One of them was empty on the way back though. So that was to carry on all of my feeding tube formula. I took water along with my feeding tube because I have a 2-bag system which has flush in there, and so I need access to room temperature filtered water at all times, and so I was able to pack water as well. I also had all of my tube care supplies in there. I had my braces and anything that I would possibly need medical-wise in those 2 bags, and I was able to carry both of them on. Matt and I didn't actually have any other carry-ons besides our medical baggage, and then we had personal items as well. So I guess technically on the way there we had 3 carry-ons because 2 were medical bags and then one of them was all of our stuff that we needed on the plane, but that one fit under the seats, so we didn't really have to worry about that one. And then this was my personal item, sort of. I also had like a little satchel type thing for other things that I would possibly need. But, oh, my address is showing. So yeah, I highly recommend that you get a medical supply tag. So I've had these on both of my big medical suitcases, and then on the way back, I put one of them on my feeding tube backpack just so that people overseas would understand what this was, because it was easier traveling on the way there because everything was English until we got there. Second, I got this device off of Etsy as well. I'll have to look up what it's actually called, but it's basically a hanging system. I don't know if you can see that. This was a lifesaver on this trip. So basically, if you have a Omni pump, especially the 2-bag system, you will notice on Etsy and other places that it is so hard to find a holder system like this for this system. Most hangers and stuff like that cater towards the infinity pump, which everybody knows what I'm talking about. If you have a feeding tube, especially if you have an infinity pump, it's like this. It's called a flying squirrel, and it's very popular for people who have the infinity pump, but they don't make it for 2-bag systems like this. And other systems that I had seen on Etsy for a 2-bag system just didn't look like they were good quality. And so once I found this system, I was very excited about it. It was very expensive to ship here. I did do like expedited shipping because I ordered it a bit late, which is my fault, but the seller was willing to expedite it for me and to just make it work for my trip and everything like that. Very kind. And it was just expensive because it's coming from the States, and then by the time it got here there was also like a UPS fee or whatever, so it was like more expensive than it should be in my opinion. But I do like it, and I do like that it fits inside of my backpack. So when I am on the go, I can just put it in my backpack with the whole system, and then when I am back home or overnight, I can just have it hanging by this on like a knob or something, or you can have it like set up as well. It has like little feet that flip out so that it holds it up. I got this instead of a travel IV pole because the travel IV pole was going to take a while to come in, and this was faster than that. So this was a huge necessity, and I highly recommend it. I'll link everything down below. Third thing for a feeding tube is I bought a tiny little adapter piece. I'll insert a clip right here because I don't have it right now. So this tiny little adapter piece goes where the charging cable goes, but instead of having to drag along my big charging cable, which may not work like travel wise in case my pump died in the middle of the day, like we were going to be in Europe, so like our adapters were in our checked luggage, and so I needed something that was just easy to charge my pump while flying and while having layovers and everything. So this little adapter piece plugs into the back, and it allows you to plug in a USB-C cord into there to charge your pump, which was so amazing for this trip. It made it so easy to travel with pump, and it was just very low profile, so I didn't have to lug around my big charge cord, and it just made travel so much easier. Again, expensive because shipping to Canada was just expensive. So if it wasn't for this being a medical chip, I probably wouldn't have bought it, but it has been so helpful because you can also charge your pump with this USB-C. You can plug it into those portable battery packs, which we also bought for this trip, which I also recommend that you have if you have medical devices. Get this little USB-C port and get those battery packs, because I was able to charge completely wirelessly like that. Well, not wirelessly, but without having to plug it into the wall. I could just plug it into the battery pack, plug it into my pump, which was so nice. Another thing, if you're traveling with medical equipment, you need a letter from your doctor that goes over everything that is in your medical bag, especially if you're taking along medically necessary liquids, because not everybody's going to understand why you have medically necessary liquids. So I had my doctor go through everything that was necessary inside of my medical bags, every liquid, every medication, I had brought snacks that I could tolerate in my medical bag as well, because of my dietary needs and also my ability to only digest certain things. I had those in my medical bag too, and they were totally fine. And my doctor also gave me her cell number, which was so nice. And I've never had a doctor, actually I've had one doctor do that, but it was after a surgery. But it was so nice because she's like, if you run into issues with security, just get them to call me at any point, no matter the time of day, just call me and we'll figure it out. Thankfully, I did not have to call her because I didn't really have issues going through security. But I'll get to that eventually, of the process of going through security with all of this equipment as well. So I had this bag, my 2 medical suitcases, and I also had my mobility aids as well. So traveling with mobility aids, I had a cane, which I was hoping to buy a fold-up cane, but the one that I bought was too big for me, and I had to return it, so I just had to fly with my own canes. If you're wondering, I'm talking about my forearm. Okay, if you're wondering, I call my forearm crutches a cane. It's not an actual cane, but that's just what I call it. And so it's really hard to find ones like that fold up, that don't break the bank. So I just had to fly with what I had. And then I also had my wheelchair. So tips and tricks for flying with your wheelchair: check whoever you're flying with, for example, Air Canada, WestJet, all those other names, companies. Check the company that you are flying with and their regulations for medical equipment and mobility aids. Some of the websites are very, very helpful in helping you figure everything out, and some of the websites for the companies that we were flying through allowed us to put in the measurements for our wheelchair, so that they already knew that we were flying with a wheelchair, it was a personal chair, and how much mobility I actually had. And so that was very helpful. because we didn't have issues with my chair moving forward. Something else that I also requested on those websites was wheelchair assistance. So that basically means that inside the airport, someone will come and push you to your gate. So whether it's in between flights or whether you are like just coming to the airport, it means that somebody will be there to help you get to your gate, which was very helpful for us because Matt had to pull both of our suitcases. He had our heavy backpack, and I don't have the ability to propel myself for very long because of my POTS and because my shoulders and wrists dislocate as I propel. And so I need someone to push me longer distances. And so this was very helpful because going through security, going through customs, and trying to make your flights on time were a lot easier with someone there to help push. If it wasn't for having that, we would have missed our flights, and we would have probably had a lot more difficulties going through customs with the amount of medical supplies and everything that we had. But every single layover that we had, so our first layover was the most difficult, so we only had an hour layover our first flight to begin with, and it was shortened down to 10 minutes. As we had just landed, there was 10 minutes to get to our next gate because they were already boarding. And we were a good distance away from that gate. And so there was supposed to be a mobility assist person there to help me get off the plane and also to push me to my next gate, but he was taking his sweet time. And so we had like a random gate assistant person was willing to run us to our gate and radioed ahead that we were coming and to hold the plane. And so we were able to board our next flight with no issues because of that person just taking the time to push me to our next location. It also helped with all of these different airports. It's hard to know where you're supposed to be. And with having medical equipment and mobility aids, it just takes more time. And so having someone who knows the airport makes you get to your gate so much faster. And so that was really, really nice to have somebody pushing me. We did run into some issues overseas with how they did things. Our second flight, they were really good about making sure that we had gotten to this waiting area fine, but then from the waiting area, we were waiting for a long time for someone to come and bring us to our gate, and by the time somebody did, they were running late, and they picked a golf cart that was too small, so Matt had to put our luggage on the golf cart and then run behind the golf cart with me in the wheelchair, which was not a good system. But we made it just fine. I just highly recommend that you have somebody to push you who knows the airport, because it also made customs so easy because we just had someone who knew the airport to help us through. And so it just made going through customs really, really easy. Next, how was it with boarding with my wheelchair? So we were supposed to have the pre-boarding. I think we only ever pre-boarded once just because of how the systems were working. They would be like, yeah, we're gonna pre-board you, and then they would ditch us until being the last people to board, which was very frustrating, but that's something else. Pre-boarding is really nice when you actually get to pre-board. I didn't know this going into it. I thought that my wheelchair would be on the plane with us, but they apparently had some sort of special compartment underneath, which is where my wheelchair went, and I didn't have any damages to my wheelchair, and my wheelchair was one of the first things unloaded and brought to me when I was deboarding the plane, so I didn't have any issues with that, thankfully. But if you're worried about that, maybe contact the company that you're flying through to see what their procedures are. We also had to make a lot of modifications to my wheelchair prior to the trip because one of the airplanes that we were flying on had height limits and my chair was too tall for that. So we had to do a lot of modifications to get it to be the correct measurements for this airplane or whatever, but it ended up making my chair a lot more comfortable, so it was fine. So that was good. Yeah, we really didn't have any issues Oh, I was going to talk about security. So going through security with mobility aids and medical bags and medical equipment. So I was hooked up the entire time that I was going through security, onto the plane, everything. I had heard so many horror stories of TSA agents being like rude and not understanding and everything like that, but I had really great security agents for the most part. So I was not supposed to go through an x-ray because when you're attached to your pump, it can mess with the settings, and so you're not supposed to go through the x-ray machine with it. So I had a pat down, and they were very kind about the pat down. So they let me still sit in my wheelchair. They basically just had me take my wheelchair seat and allow that to go through the x-ray machine, which was fine. And then they like talked me through the pat down. At one of the places they hardly even touched me. I still had my this backpack like on the handles of my wheelchair, and so they just like would be like, is it okay if I open this? And so they would like open my backpack and just look and everything like that. They did not open any of my formula bottles. You'll want to make sure that they don't open them. If you need them to not open them, mention that. So we had mentioned that, and we also Matt was like watching them like a hawk like the entire time to make sure that they wouldn't open any of my formula. On the way there, we didn't have any issues. Security was great and understood protocols of everything with feeding equipment and wheelchairs and everything like that, so it was a very easy experience. On the way back, we did run into some issues because they didn't speak our language, and I guess don't have people with feeding tubes very often, so we did have they did call their police agents or whatever on us because we had all of this liquid in our suitcase, which was only a quarter of what we even started with. But basically, as soon as those agents came, they barely looked at it and they're like, yep, you're good, because they understood what this was for. Whereas the security agents kept thinking that I was diabetic or something and that this was an insulin pump, but it's not. So they were a bit confused. Thankfully, I didn't actually have to pull out my medical note at any point. I had it out and ready if they needed it, especially in Spain when they just weren't understanding what I was trying to communicate. So yeah, if you're worried about that, just make sure that you have your medical note ready. Be ready to explain what you can of your medical system and where it is on your body, just so that when they are patting you down, they know where it is and they will be gentle and everything like that. So honestly, I had a really good experience with security, and that gave me a lot of peace. We did have one security agent on the way home. This wasn't even my experience. My boarding pass was working just fine, but Matt's boarding pass was not working, so he was supposed to go back through security. But the medical bags are both my bags, and so he was just going to come around to give me my bags, and this agent was being a butt and was like, you have to bring those bags through, and the lady who was pushing me was like, no, he doesn't, they're her bags. And so ultimately she just went and grabbed my bags from Matt and brought them to me, because it would have been a nightmare if he had to go through security without me with all of my medical bags, and they're not even his. And so thankfully we had that agent who was just firm with the security person, and he didn't have to go through security with any of our baggage because it was all my bags. So you will run into people who are trying to assert their authority over you, but there are also so many people who are kind and trying to make sure that you have the best experience, which was what we had in our case. More people were wanting to make sure that we had a really good experience, and were very helpful and asked good questions and were very respectful of my equipment. So I was very, very fortunate in that case. I know not everybody is as fortunate as I am, and I'm so sorry if that is you who has had a very bad experience, but this is my experience, and I hope that it helps you on your next trip. Oh, something else that I had to do prior to leaving is so we had a little issue at the very beginning with my wheelchair when we had booked tickets, and I had to call, we were flying through Air Canada, so I had to call Air Canada just to explain my wheelchair situation, which was actually fine, apparently. And then I just asked about a feeding tube and stuff, so I I think if I wouldn't have mentioned that, I wouldn't have needed to do this step, but I'm kind of glad that I did it anyways. My doctor had to basically just fill out a fit to fly form, and I had to send it in to Air Canada so that they knew that I was safe to fly and that I had the permission from my doctor to fly. So yeah, it was honestly good. It also, like, on that form, like, made sure that Matt could not be separated from me at any point in time, whether that was to, like, you know how sometimes they separate you on the plane, or maybe one of you can go on the plane and the other one has to catch a different one. Like, it just made it so that that could not happen to us at all, and we were together at all points in time. So okay, this is Nikki of the future realizing that I forgot something very important. If you have a feeding tube, you should make sure that you pack an extra pair of clothes in your carry-on, because on our very last flight, my feeding tube opened, and I didn't realize for such a long time that I was absolutely soaked in bile and stomach contents, to the point where, like, my pants were super duper wet and my underwear were absolutely soaked, and I smelled like bile, and I smelled so bad. And because I had forgotten to pack an extra pair of clothes on the way back, I had done it on the way there, but I forgot on the way back. I thankfully had a sweater that I could change into, but I had to go and buy really expensive leggings, so that was a very expensive mistake. So I highly recommend that you make sure that you have a spare change of clothes, a spare like feeding tube set if you use those, and yeah. If you have questions about our travel experience, drop them down below. I would love to share them with you. I'm sorry if I missed things. The brain fog is brain fogging really bad. But don't forget to give this video a like, and if you would like to continue to follow my journey, I would love to have you, and you can do that by subscribing down below. Don't forget that I post every Thursday. I'll see you guys next week. Bye!